The last day of death row. Inmate Thomas Loden. The haunting story of a fallen Marine. Welcome back. Tonight, we step into one of the most haunting cases to emerge from the state of Mississippi. A case that forces us to ask how a decorated U.S. Marine, once celebrated for his service, could end up spending his final hours on death row. His name was Thomas Edwin Loden, Jr., a man who wore the uniform with pride, earned medals, and commanded respect. Yet, 2 decades later, he would be remembered not for his achievements, but for the devastating choices that led him to the execution chamber on December 14, 2022. This story is not just about crime and punishment. It is about psychology, trauma, and the chilling final day of a man who had once been a hero. Stay with us until the end, because the last 24 hours of Thomas Loden reveal truths few are prepared to confront. And friends, don't forget, subscribe for more powerful prison documentary stories. Born and raised in Itawamba County, Mississippi, Loden grew up surrounded by small-town traditions, graduating from the local high school in 1982. By all accounts, he was bright, disciplined, and destined for something greater. Almost immediately after graduation, he enlisted in the Marines. His military career was nothing short of remarkable. He was praised as an outstanding recruit, quickly advancing through the ranks until he became a gunnery sergeant. He received multiple awards and, during the Gulf War, served with distinction. But war leaves its mark, and for Loden, that mark was deep. He witnessed violence firsthand, and he carried home the trauma of losing close comrades, one of whom was a newlywed with a young child. Those images haunted him, and according to those who later studied his life, they triggered years of post-traumatic stress. After returning from service, Loden seemed unable to fully reintegrate. He drank heavily, used drugs, and eventually masked his pain with harmful addictions. Despite these struggles, he remained respected within the Marines, eventually becoming a recruiter in Vicksburg, Mississippi. He was married, had a daughter, and lived the outward image of a family man. Yet beneath the surface, the war within himself raged quietly, unseen by many. On June 21, 2000, Loden traveled from his home to his grandmother's farm in rural Itawamba County. His grandmother, disabled and confined to a wheelchair, needed help with chores around the property. For most, this would have been a simple family visit, a return to childhood roots. But for Thomas Loden, this trip marked the beginning of a chain of events that would alter lives forever. The next day, June 22nd, he walked into Comer's Cafe, a small diner owned by a local family. Working there that night was 16-year-old Lisa Marie Gray. She was bright, cheerful, and well known in her community. A student leader at her high school, a member of her church youth group, and deeply loved by her family. Lisa was planning for her senior year and dreaming about the future. Witnesses later remembered how she smiled as she served customers, always polite, always kind. That evening, when Loden entered the cafe, the atmosphere shifted. At 6'6", he was an imposing figure, a man twice her age, whose presence unsettled patrons. Reports say he was overly familiar with Lisa, behavior that made others uncomfortable. Unbeknownst to him, an old acquaintance from high school recognized him and noticed that he was staying at his grandmother's farm. In a small town, word spreads quickly, and soon many knew he was back in the area. After leaving the cafe, Loden began planning actions that would cast a shadow over his life forever. He returned later that night, ordered another meal, and lingered until closing time. Outside in the parking lot, he tampered with Lisa's car, puncturing a tire so that she would inevitably become stranded. Then he waited. Around 10:30 that evening, as Lisa finished her shift and drove home, her car failed only half a mile from the cafe. She pulled over, turned on her hazard lights, and stepped out to inspect the tire. Minutes later, Loden pulled up behind her, appearing to offer help. He told her he was a Marine, that he was trained to assist in moments like this. To a young girl facing car trouble late at night, his uniformed past must have lent some authority, but the trust implied by that introduction quickly turned into fear. Lisa did not return home as expected, and her family immediately became alarmed. Her mother, who also worked at the cafe, began calling friends and colleagues, trying to locate her daughter. Before long, Her parents and the cafe cook returned to the roadside where they found her abandoned car, purse, and phone still inside. Something was terribly wrong. Investigators were called, and the search for Lisa began before dawn. Police quickly traced Loden through witness reports of the tall man with the van. When they visited his grandmother's home, they found disturbing signs. Blood-stained clothing on his bedroom floor and a rope tied with a knot commonly associated with restraints. His van was seized and sent for examination. What they discovered inside would confirm the community's worst fears. Hidden beneath the seats was the lifeless body of Lisa Marie Gray. Loden, meanwhile, attempted to evade responsibility. He was later found on the side of a road with superficial wounds. The words, "I'm sorry," carved into his chest. Taken to a hospital, he survived, only to face the evidence that tied him irrevocably to the crime. In September 2001, Loden pleaded guilty to all charges, waiving his right to a jury trial. His plea left no ambiguity, and he was sentenced to death. For the Gray family, the tragedy was immeasurable. Over 1,000 mourners attended Lisa's funeral, where her pastor spoke words that moved even the strongest men to tears. A white cross was later placed at the site where she was taken, a quiet reminder of a life cut short and a community forever changed. Loden would spend the next 21 years on death row in Mississippi. During that time, the state carried out few executions, and for many years, his case faded from the public eye. But in November 2022, officials announced that his execution was scheduled for December 14th. It would be only the second execution in Mississippi in more than a decade. As the date approached, preparations followed the standard protocol. In his final days, Loden remained confined in his cell, writing letters, reflecting on the choices that had defined his life. Reports note that his last meal included a favorite Southern dish, a reminder of his Mississippi roots. On the evening of December 14th, witnesses gathered inside the execution chamber. Family members of Lisa Gray were present, as were journalists, officials, and spiritual advisors. Mississippi has not seen many executions in recent history, but when they do occur, they remind us of the weight carried by every decision in the justice system. It is a process both solemn and irreversible. Thank you for joining us. Dear friends, if you found this story meaningful, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful prison documentary stories.